Hello, everybody. We are so excited to have you here for our summit session with Homework Solutions. We've got Franny and Rachel here. We're going to go and introduce ourselves in just a second. Just a couple housekeeping notes if you can keep yourself muted, unless you are called on for a question specifically. And then we will have a resource sheet at the end. You'll be getting all these slides, so don't worry about taking notes necessarily unless that's helpful for you, or making sure you grab a screenshot of every single slide. You will get them at the end. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our wonderful partners, Franny and Rachel. Can you each tell everyone a little bit about yourselves?
Sure, I'll go first. I'm Rachel Lawrence, again with Homework Solutions. I'm the Senior Partner Specialist, which basically means I go out and educate our partners and their clients and their caregivers, and then at conferences and things, a little bit about why legal pay matters, or what does it even mean to be paid legally and how do you do that? And then building in things like we're bringing into today with a little bit more information. Once you get past that initial step of I understand legal pay, then what? The sky's the limit, and where do you go with it? That's my focus.
Annie?
Yeah, so I am the household employment consultant at Homework Solutions for Annie Wood. What that means on my end is I do a lot of day-to-day, a lot of consultations with nannies, with families, with CPA partners, with agencies.
We love Franny.
Most of my calls are centered around, I have this unique situation. What do I do? And how do we fix it? Hence the name. Consulting is all I do, probably multiple hours a day. I'm on the phone. Any questions that you have along the way, happy to point you to the right resource or help you get the right answer. That's my whole job.
Absolutely. And I am Reagan. I am the marketing director here at Adventure Nannies. If you're a summit session regular, I was actually one of the last summit sessions of myself, but now I'm here on the other end on the Adventure Nannies team. So I'm so excited to be here. If you have any questions about Adventure Nannies and what we do, we've got links to our job board, our blog post, and some candidate resources, as well as information about Nanny Camp. So I am also the Nanny Camp director. If you've heard about it, we have it coming up in August 29th through September 1st. Tickets are getting close to sold out, so we want to make sure everyone here knew about that as well. And the reason we have our friends at Homework Solution here is because they are partners in payroll, and we are so excited. We are here to talk about how to make your compensation work for you. So I know that this is a little bit more advanced conversation for some people. So Rachel, I would love to know, for anyone who's a little bit more of a novice, can you give us a little bit of the basic background of the conversation before we dive into the nitty gritty?
Yeah, let's do high level on what does it even mean to be paid legally, right? A lot of people don't even know that there are legal requirements for tax withholdings and contributions to things like Social Security, Medicare, unemployment. It really should operate just like you worked anywhere else. If you were to go get a job at an office building, you would have all of these things done. And the same holds true for household employers. Slightly different forms, slightly different process, but the same concept. So you want to make sure that when you enter into a new position, or you can always adjust a current position that you're in, that you are a W-2 employee. The difference between these two things is basically W-2 employees are the employees of the families that they work for. And I bet that's how you think about yourself. That's also how labor laws think of you. You go to work and the family controls most aspects of the relationship. What time to be there? What should you do? What shouldn't you do? Can't send in a substitute worker, things like that. So that's what makes you a W-2 employee. On the opposite side is a 1099. These are self-employed people or independent contractors. In our industry, that's really never going to apply to anyone, with one exception. If you are an NCS on this call, it may apply to you. But the truth is, if you have your own business and you're paying yourself through that business, a 1099 is irrelevant. You can just invoice the family, they can pay your business, and then you pay yourself from that business. Really, everyone on this call is falling into one of those two categories. And once we are sure that we are doing everything as a W-2 employee and having taxes withheld from our pay, family paying in their taxes, how do you know if you're being paid fairly as opposed to just legally? Things like FLSA law, the Fair Labor Standards Act, are going to come into play. We've got lots of resources on that. You can always reach out to us. But basically, these are the things that go over things like, are you working if the baby's sleeping? Things like that, that just tell you how to judge those and what laws apply. And then, of course, every state has some laws as well that they can layer on top of these federal laws. So it's always good to know what the laws are in your state. Again, we have tip sheets for all 50 states. So we're coming into this conversation assuming you either know that, or you will go look at some of our resources. There's a video I recorded for sort of the 101 since we're going 201. So if this feels still like a little foreign concept, that's okay. Stay with us. Get the 201, go back and refresh in the 101.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Now that we have the 101 a little bit covered, what does it mean to really be financially healthy in this conversation?
Sure, that looks so different for every person probably on this call. Even two best friends on this call that think that they are in the same town and same sort of career path might have completely different answers to them. It really depends on where you're starting now and where you want to go. What is important to you? And don't just think about this. Write it down. I want to pay down my debt. I want an emergency fund. I want to invest and make money not working. What is your goal? Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's a trip. Maybe it's just the ability to do those things should the day and event come up. So just figure out what that is and then take that and monetize it and essentially work backwards, right? If you know that you want $1,000 in case one of your friends calls you up and says, hey, I've got this great trip. You want to join me? So you want a fund for that, or maybe in case your refrigerator breaks or whatever it is, right? Take that $1,000 and work it backwards and do it in what they call a SMART goal way. These things are specific, they're measurable, they are achievable for whatever your current situation is. Like, I would love to just say, oh, let me just move that $1,000 over to that account right now. We would all love that. But is that really attainable for you? Or is it better to work backwards on that, right? And do a little bit every month and then celebrate that goal when you hit it. They also need to be relevant to your life. I don't need to save up for an elephant. I have nowhere to put an elephant. Again, I know, again, you just
I
don't
want
know.
one.
But think about what they are and think about this acronym. I think it really helps guide you through writing that down, and writing it down makes it real, right? And it makes you more likely to do it. And part of setting these SMART goals and then achieving them are things like atomic habits. And that's what we were just saying, right? They all work together. If you have that $1,000 goal and you say, gosh, I know I can't even put $100 a month towards that based on my current situation. Okay, what about 83? It's going to take you a year to get there, but think how great that's going to feel after a year. And $83, you can probably flesh out a little bit here and there. Or maybe you can't. Maybe you say that takes 2 years for me. Wherever you are, start there. I'm going to tell you a funny but personal story really quick. I have 3 children and a full-time job and passions in my life, and I have no time, or at least it feels that way. I really wanted to be able to work out, but I don't have an hour a day. You know what I do have? I have 3 minutes before I get in the shower to do push-ups and all of the things I'm going to do. Am I going to become Arnold Schwarzenegger tomorrow? I am not. But you know what? After a year, how many push-ups is that? How many sit-ups is that? It's 3 minutes, and I can't argue with 3 minutes. I always have 3 minutes. Same here. Maybe it's $5 a week. You might feel like that doesn't add up very quickly, but over the course of a year, it really does.
That's amazing. I love that analogy and the 3 minutes a day. I might have to take that one up on my own life. Because yes, it's so true. It can be hard to find that hour a day, but the 3 minutes you can find, it can be hard to find the $100 a month, but that $5 you might be able to find.
Right.
So I love that so much. Now, once you have reached some of those goals and you have that extra funds, Franny, what can they do with those extra funds? How can you really maximize your earnings?
This is a great time of year to talk about this because a lot of people do end up getting either a year-end bonus at the end of a calendar year or a tax refund even. Not everybody, depending on how you plan, but this is a good time of year to think about what do you do when you get that extra little cushion of money in your pocket and you think about all the things that you want to do, even though there are plenty of things you have to do. I mean, I know for myself, so many times if I've gotten like a refund or a bonus, something would happen and I go, oh, now my car needs tires, or oh, now I should go ahead and handle that credit card that I racked up over the holidays that I wanted to get the gifts I wanted to get for the people I wanted to get the gifts for. But nothing wrong with that. You can certainly put money towards that. But depending on what money you're working with, I love playing with percentages of it. So if you're trying to work towards these different goals of savings and you're trying to figure out what to do with this money, certainly debt consolidation, emergency savings, all these things are important. The very first thing I suggest doing at this time of year is considering retirement. There are different annual limits. Okay. So there's so much you can contribute to certain funds, and most nannies, if they don't have a fund set up, when they do set one up, they're setting up a traditional or Roth IRA. And we're going to talk a little bit about those. Some families, also employers, will help set up an account to contribute funds as well. If you don't have a retirement account set up right now, but you've been thinking, man, I wish I did. I wish I had something set up. Maybe now is a good time to think about contributing to it if you do have a particular financial cushion due to a refund, due to a year-end bonus, due to an annual bonus was coming up. Really, technically, April 15th, the tax deadline is also the deadline to still make a contribution for last year's, the calendar year, basically. So you can, right now, if you have a year-end bonus and you go, man, I don't have a retirement account set up, this is a good time of year to go, okay, let me just do this. Even if you just take 50% of that, it doesn't have to be a ton of money, okay? Now is a good time to go, maybe this is just when I take the step to open it, and then I'll start contributing more as the year goes on. I will say that different families are open to helping build a retirement with you. Some are not, because just like all of us here on this call, this can feel very intimidating if you've never touched this process before. So I think of retirement options in two camps. And in camp one, you have what you can control, what you can set up and do without your employer's help. You decide, I want to go to Fidelity. I want to go to Charles Schwab. I want to go just talk to my bank. I want to Google online and see what's reviewed the best. This is the time to go, okay, if I want to have ownership of it, I don't really want to even have this conversation with my boss. Think about a traditional or a Roth IRA. Simple difference between both of these here when it comes to taxes. Really, when you have a traditional IRA, you might hear of things being tax deductible during tax season, which means you get a form where you're able to say when you do your taxes, hey, I put $1,000 into this account throughout the year, and I now want to take credit for the fact that I did that. And taxes, basically, you're able to deduct that amount. But then when you get the money during retirement, it is taxed at the rate that you're taking it out. So it's one of those where you get a little bit of a tax break now, but you're going to pay taxes in retirement. And some people are like, that's fine by me. That's a long way away. I don't mind that. A lot of nannies that I speak with tend to like the Roth IRA, which is a little bit different, but you're still taxed on the amount, right? You're still paying income taxes, you're still paying Social Security and Medicare. But when you receive that money during retirement, you don't have taxes that come out during that point. There are kind of pros and cons to both, but honestly, a lot of that is preferential. Some people have really strong opinions about a traditional or Roth IRA. The reality is they have a lot of similarities. They both have a $7,000 per year limit if you're under the age of 50, or $8,000 if you're over the age of 50 per year. So when you're thinking, and we'll talk about those limits again as we move down in our information here, but every single thing out there when you're thinking about retirement is going to have a limit to it. The traditional and Roth, they carry the same limitations for the amount you can contribute annually. Now, for families who are interested in helping you, you have a little bit more flexibility. There is basically two main options: a SEP IRA, and you don't have to know too much about it. I will tell you, your employer is the one who has to set it up for you. So I will tell you that even if you don't understand all of the ins and outs, your employer is responsible for setting it up and contributing. It actually is a contribution on top of your wage. So if you're speaking with a family and They offer you a certain amount of money per year and, okay, this is my rate. This is what I know I'll be working. Is that comparable? And that's actually a really good offer, but I'd really love some of that to just go to retirement. That's a negotiation point, right? Like you're able to think, oh, okay, maybe they'd be willing to set this up and I can ask them or I can give them a resource or direct them to us and we'll give them a resource. A lot of families are a little hesitant about that, just unless maybe the employer is a financial planner or there's something there. And yes, there's a tax. I see a question pop up there. There's a tax benefit for the family. So that's the nice thing about that. There is some motivation there that helps them want to dig in and learn. Alternatively, a simple IRA is also a way for you to contribute and for the family to match up to 3%. There is an annual limit on your contributions to that, which is $16,500. So it's a kind of a funny number there. But I'll say that's another common one that we see families, even with Homework Solutions, where they go, okay, hey, we want to match. We want to incentivize her to save and we want to match 3% of her earnings so that she can start building this account as well. Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more as time goes on, but biggest thing that I suggest right now when you have a little bit of extra money in your pocket is to think about retirement just because of the April 15th deadline. This is just a good time of year to get it in there. But obviously, other big things that you might be considering is paying down high interest debt. No one likes to talk about it, but we all know, especially if you had holidays or you maybe got a new job and needed to get a new car and needed to do all these other things, there just might be something that you have been meaning to pay down that has just been sitting there creeping over your shoulder, just feeling like, ugh, I want to get rid of it. When I think about the order of what you want to throw your money at while you're thinking of retirement, don't ignore the fact that if you have some high interest debt and you want to consolidate that, if that would give you more cushion room month over month to start saving for retirement regularly, maybe that's the move you want to make. Alternatively, emergency fund. If you don't have an emergency fund to set up, unemployment is very helpful when you're between jobs. Emergency funds can go a long way to give you the flexibility to really choose the next job that you want and not feel like you're forced into a quick decision because you have to be. Think about that as you go forward. Think about retirement. Think about consolidating debt. Think about emergency funds. And of course, think about if you have a vacation or a rainy day fund, it's okay to split this financial cushion that you might have at the moment across multiple things.
And if you are in a position where you have that cushion and you are looking for a new job and a nanny's looking at an offer or even their current compensation, Rachel, what should they consider to make the most of those compensation dollars?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's sort of two ways you can go about this. You can either say, I want things on top of my wage. And that could be a raise and review period if you're in a current job. That could be, I made this at my last job and this next one, I want to go a step further. So I want to negotiate them on top. Or you can take an offer a family gave you and essentially work backwards. Maybe they're not thinking about all these things, right? So you can say, okay, you're offering me X amount of dollars, whether that's $50,000 or $90,000, whatever it is a year. Often families will come to you with an annual budget and then they'll work it back and say, okay, this is how much you're going to make per week or every other week or whatever, however their brain is thinking about it. So you could pivot that a little bit, right? You can say, here's how my brain's thinking about that. I think, great, $90,000. Sweet, that works for me. But I don't really want to pay taxes on $90,000. So what if I could make it a win for me and I could make it a win for you and we could all pay less in taxes, but not change that 90, right? We'll keep your number. Let's just put things in different buckets, right? If it's all what they call cash wages, which doesn't mean they're literally paying you in cash. It just means that it's these taxable normal wages, right? Business as usual. You can instead say, let's pick a number, $5,000. I want to take $5,000 and I want to play with that and get something I want out of it that benefits you and makes the whole thing feel like it goes farther. So you can take that $5,000 and before we jump into any kind of specific about how that applies with taxes, but what are even options for that $5,000, right? A real big hitter is a healthcare reimbursement, right? Things because this year it changes every year, but this year for a single person, it's $6,350 that a family can contribute to a reimbursement You have to actually have a healthcare policy. You prove that you have it, and you have to have at least that much going out the door in healthcare expenses or more, right? You could put money there, whether it's that full maximum or, like you said, maybe we're working with $5,000. If you have a family plan, it's a little higher. It's $12,800. So that's usually your biggest hitter. And so in that situation, if the family does a QSARA, or there's another one called an ICRA, which works very similarly, but most people in our space would go with a QSARA. The family, that money that they're contributing, they aren't taxed. They don't have their employer taxes. And you don't have employee taxes. It's great for them. Their tax obligation is about 10%, but for you, it's a real win. You're paying a much higher percentage in taxes because you have things like federal income tax, possibly state income tax, possibly local income tax. So it really, for most nannies, is quite a big savings. And so that's really the biggest hitter in this space, but it's not the only one. I know some people on this call are saying, I already have health insurance through a spouse or my parents. I don't need that. One, some of these still apply in those situations. The family still gets the tax benefit, even if you're covered under a spouse's. You don't, but it's still the equivalent of getting a bonus, right? It's still free money that has an advantage for them. The other things that you can, another big hitter is education, $5,250 off the top of my head, that you can have towards going to conferences, going to community college, going to a certificate program, whatever it is. Again, essentially, this is a reimbursement. So you have the expense. Yes, the family, they reimburse you, but you build this into your contract ahead of time. There are also smaller ones, but they add up, right? So things like you're in a big city, you need to park close to the family's house. They can do reimbursements for parking spaces. Maybe you were paying that because you didn't want to take public transit or you didn't want to park really far away because you work late at night. Now build that into your comp package, right? That's really a reimbursement for something that is part of your job. And I say that because I know whether it's crafting supplies or parking spaces, we often, because we are caregivers who generally aren't as bold in these conversations, and I say we, it's part of mine too. Oh, it's fine. I'll pay for the parking and maybe I'll get that one that's $200 instead of $300 and it's fine. But they can win too, right? They're not paying taxes on this. So we can build all these things in. You can build in part of your cell phone. Probably not using every minute of your cell phone and every text message and every piece of data for that family. So I wouldn't suggest 100%. But think of how many hours you work versus how many hours you don't work. I always tell people you should be able to argue it with a straight face in court, right? But build that into your comp package. And these little things might seem little, but they add up over time, or you can make combinations of them, right? So that you get all of the things that you want and you pay less in taxes and so does the family.
I love that. That is so wonderful. Do you have an example of what it would look like to put together a total compensation package like that?
Let's just run with a very broad example, very round numbers, very broad assumption. Okay. Because everyone on this call, are you married? Are you not? Does your spouse work? Do they not? Are there 3 jobs at play? 4 jobs at play? Do you have dependent children? Like we all have these different things in our lives, right? So I'm going to go just basic and round numbers. So don't get stuck on the numbers. Let's think of this more as a concept. So if you have $90K that this family's offering you, and you, again, we'll go with round numbers. You're going to take that $5K, as I mentioned as an example earlier, and play with that. I would start by writing down what's important to you. Write down, if there's only one, write down one. If there's 3, write down 3. If it's everything, write it down from the most important to the least, or from what you feel is the biggest impact to the smallest. Again, for most people, this is something in the way of the healthcare reimbursement or education. That $5,000 example is really easy, right? Throw the whole $5,000 in there because those limits are high. Simple, easy conversation with the family. You're going to pay, again, I'm going generally speaking here, that's going to save you like $1,000 in taxes a year. There's your emergency fund right there that we talked about in the other example. Hey, family, I'm so financially smart. Why don't you take that $500 that you saved and give me something else? Don't say it like that. But right, like use that $500 to say, let's keep working this. Because it's also, we tell employers all the time, this is great for them too, because now you're even happier with your job, right? And you aren't shopping around because this family values you and they're working with you on the things you've asked and they've got to win and you've got to win. If maybe healthcare reimbursement and education aren't where you're at right now, you're covered under a spouse. And gosh, if you even had 10 minutes to sit down, that'd be great. I certainly don't want to go get some education somewhere. I just don't have the bandwidth right now. Start chipping away at the other things. Find that parking reimbursement. It's $325 a month for 2025, or a transit pass reimbursement for that Beltline pass or whatever it is, right? Part of the cell phone, all of these little things that you can do to chip away at it. You'd be surprised how quickly you can spend that $5,000. And some will work more for you. Some will work more for a family. So just like when you go interview and you have to find that happy space where everyone gets what they need, that's great. And also you can keep that Christmas list, right? Like, or that raise and review list. Maybe it's $5,000 now and you make it to your first anniversary. You're a rocking good nanny. And so now they really want to reward you for that. When they go to say, hey, we would like to give you a raise, you've been awesome. Think about whether you really do need that in cash wages, and you might. Or think about whether now it's time to add that retirement Randy talked about, right? And they can do a matching and again, save money there. Or now it's time to build in the healthcare, et cetera. A vague answer, but think of it in an excited way. Think of it as an allowance to spend shopping or a fun way to fit the puzzle together, right? Finances and taxes tend to give people anxiety. But if you can reframe that to, I'm going to say $85K cash wages, and then I'm going to make a shopping list of things I want in my life and ask the family to spend that same $5,000 they were going to give me in cash wages a different way. Think about how that's going to feel when they say yes. You'll have all the things you need. They save money and so did you.
That's amazing. I love it. That is incredible. And so once we save all this money, and I know you alluded to it earlier, Franny, you kept giving all these hints. How are we going to save it and invest it? What are all of our options for how we invest our money?
This is a good time for everybody to take a nice deep breath. We're getting into a little bit more complex topics. Rachel and I are not financial advisors. I have an accounting degree. I'm not going to be a financial advisor anytime soon, but we'll see. We'll see what life has in store. I will tell you that these topics take time. And yes, I like alliteration. Bear with me as we go along. When Rachel's giving this example, it just reminded me of how often when I help a family onboard and we discuss fringe benefits, they get overwhelmed. So if you are feeling overwhelmed right now, know that it's okay. A lot of this you can start having a conversation about with the current family you're with. You don't have to wait for the next family you're working for. I tell families when they're getting nervous about these topics, I say, look, this article on fringe benefits that Rachel just went through, you can revisit this at the 6-month mark after you get things going and you guys have a rhythm and a routine towards the time of year when people renew health insurance. And you can say, let's take a look at this together. Is there anything here you're currently paying for that we could track as tax-free? Or is there anything that you're hopeful for the future with us as we grow together? And those kind of questions open a door to a conversation. And I offer for them to call us back, even with you on the phone, like just as like a conference call or a Teams call, to have a conversation. And if they're not a client of ours, totally fine. They can also have that free conversation, because I'll tell you what, getting that information correctly can be a life-changing conversation for both you and the family. And that is our goal here. Now, a lot of this might feel overwhelming. My suggestion is to just take this one topic at a time. There's going to be, Reagan has arranged QR codes for people to look up more detailed information. The idea is that, as Rachel said, once you've fine-tuned your compensation goals and how you can maybe figure out where to save money along the way, you've created space to go down the next path. Okay. And so think about saving and investing as both short term and long term. I'll give a simple example for myself. I was a nanny for over 16 years. So a very long time. I nannied and I loved it, but I definitely didn't save for retirement. I didn't think about it. I was in school. I was then getting married. I was moving. I was at one point taking care of family who lived with me. Life happens and you don't think about retirement because retirement's down the road. You're like, I'm going to get to that. I'll get to that later. And I wish I would have started sooner. I so wish I would have just treated this like a book that I had to study or just something that I had to learn how to do. Just like when you have to learn how to drive, you have a period where you're learning how to drive, right? You have to really devote some time to understand these different concepts. And yet it's worth it. I wish I would have done it sooner. I encourage you all to take time to go through these very general articles on these topics so that when you are sitting down with your finances and thinking about your annual income and just how to plan for things and how to prepare for your future, you have a little bit of an idea of where you want to lean towards for your funds to go. So we're going to start by talking about municipal funds. Generally speaking, are tax-free. It's a great place to put your money that you can then pull back in a tax-free manner. I'll tell you, for me, I started using them to save for a car. Okay. I started throwing money into it. And then when the time came that I had to trade in a car, I actually only touched $1,000 that I had saved in there. And I just kept still putting money in. So I got the loan that I needed to get. I paid my car payment through my bank account like most people do. And I didn't take all of that money out of there. I just was like, okay, I'm going to keep most of it there and just take what I need to have a little bit of a down payment because car interest rates are rather low. And it was transferred into my account within a few days. I didn't have to pay taxes on it during tax season. So the idea is this is a place you could put your funds that's out of sight, out of mind. So you're not tempted to grab them and do something with them. And you might not get as quite a high return on them, depending on the municipal funds and how they're set up, but it's similar to the long-term savings account. So you can always compare them and just see, okay, should I put my money in this long-term account where I know the yield is pretty similar, or should I put them over here? Like, where do I want to put them to get the most return for it? I really enjoyed putting them out of sight, out of mind, where I didn't have to touch them too much. And then I just kept letting it grow. And then during a period when my husband was out of work, he was laid off, we actually used it as an emergency savings pool. So we didn't have to go touch retirement or other things. We just went, okay, that will help supplement. So that is something I can't even recommend enough how lovely that was to just go down. That was my first foray into how do I start saving. Now, because there are variations in it, again, this is where you might want to tag in a financial advisor or someone who can guide you on what might work best for yourself. So municipal funds being a big one. Another one that we talked about a little bit earlier, the retirement. Of course, retirement is going to be a great place to start. I will say what I didn't talk about before with the SEP IRAs is that while employers can contribute up to 25% of your gross wages towards it, a lot of employers, the reason they're hesitant, even though there is a tax break for it, they have to actually offer the same percentage to other staff that they have. So if you work for an employer that has maybe 5 different people working in the home, maybe they have a housekeeper, they have a night nanny, they have a day nanny, they have a chef, they have just household staff that are all full-time. The reason an employer might also hesitate is because they have to offer similar incentives to other staff members that maybe they might not want to. So if that's the case, that's where your next game here is to say, okay, what about the simple IRA? Can we look at that a little bit? But keeping that in mind, I will tell you that when I think about municipal funds and how I can be complementary to my other goals of retirement savings, I think of municipal funds as emergency savings. I think of retirement contributions as just something that I need to build up to do to fit the maximum limit per year. That's just something that is like a good personal goal to go, did I do that? Can we make sure that box is checked if I have the flexibility to do? Another thing that I've been just learning more about that I wish we all did is the 529 college savings plans. When we hear that, for those of us who have heard it, we think about dependents. We think about our children. Okay. We think about saving for the future and being able to contribute to our children's education. But the actuality is you can actually make yourself the beneficiary for future education. If I would have known that before I went back for my second degree, I might have done that. So there's basically for a 529 college savings plan, while there are a couple ways to structure it, you can create it with yourself as the recipient, basically. Okay. Now, sure, if you wanted to then change your mind 10 years from now and use it for a dependent, you totally can. But the other thing that changed, I think it was in 2022, is that some funds that are in there, and there might be a limit on when it was put in, can be used towards student loans, actually, and for
Oh, wow.
Roth IRA conversions. So let's say you start this fund, maybe you build it up, maybe you just contribute here and there to it. Maybe you have like over the next 5 years, you have somewhere around 7,000 in there. And then you decide, I don't think I am going to go back to school, or I don't think I'm going to have a dependent. I want to give it to you. Sure, you could cash it out and get taxed, or you could go, let me roll that over this year to my Roth IRA instead. And that's still subject to that 7,000 limit if you're under 50 or 8,000 if you're over. But you can then do that instead. Perfectly fine. And then the 7,000 you had been budgeting for your Roth IRA, put it towards something else. There's a little bit more flexibility there than what I had imagined. And I honestly, the thought of being able to use it towards my own education, if I had one set up, that would have been great.
Yeah, I have one set up for my son, but I never thought about it for
Yeah.
myself. So
Okay.
that's an incredible tip.
Yeah, so definitely read through that. Obviously, some people then get into a little bit more of what about what we hear about a lot of like traditional Roth IRAs for retirement and then like index funds for retirement and investing. Best advice that I have when you're thinking about how much do I put in something like a municipal fund that is sort of low risk, long-term savings account, low risk. How much do I put in an index fund that is high risk? So to keep it simple, a high risk means like you might lose it. If the market changes, like the money goes down too. So you're putting your money into there and you can feel like, oof, what if it does go down when the market's bad? Everybody, you hear about it, everybody's complaining about it. And meanwhile, you're like, I don't know how it works. I just want to know that I'm growing my money for retirement. So there is an interesting rule, like an age rule, which I recommend following, where I'll use the example. Let's say you're 40 years old, okay? And you're thinking about how much of my $1,000 am I going to put towards my municipal fund or my long-term savings account, and how much am I going to put towards maybe my index fund investment through Fidelity that I opened? Like, where am I putting my $1,000? The idea is that the younger you are, it is okay to put the higher amount towards the high risk index fund. So if you're 40, you want to think of your age like a percentage, and you want to go, okay, if I'm 40 out of 100, because let's all live to 100 or beyond, I'm going to take 60% of this $1,000 and put it towards the index fund, and the other 40 towards the safer route, municipal fund, the long-term savings account, the Roth IRA. I'm going to put it in a safe, low risk area. And as you age, you can start changing those percentages. So if you're 30 right now, you might go, I'm going to put of my $1,000, 70% in that and 30% in the low risk. And then as you age, you can even move those funds over. So a lot of people, when they're thinking about being savvy about this and they've built up a good nest egg and they start talking to their financial advisor a little bit more and they're going, okay, now I feel like I have a handle on this, and now I'm seeking professional help to guide me in this. Some people actually will move from a riskier investment over to a safer investment as they get older. So it's not just all new income that's coming in. They're actually moving current income that they have to other accounts that are, or other investments that are low risk. So it's all about thinking, as I get closer to retirement, that's not when I want the market to dip and I lose a bunch of money. I want to make sure I'm moving that somewhere safe as I near retirement, so I know that I'm set. You might have heard of a couple other things like annuities. And if you haven't heard of annuities, would not be surprised. I'm pretty sure the only people I have heard speak of it are people in retirement right now.
There's some native commercial, catchy
There's like a
commercial that
commercial.
talks about annuities. That's the only thing I know about.
Think of it like an insurance policy. You know how you hear about like life insurance or term life insurance, and of course it pays out to someone else if you pass away, right? This is an idea that you're basically paying into this annuity. You are going to receive it during retirement. So you pay, you have a period of paying and paying and paying. And then when you're retired, ideally, if it's a good quality one and it's a company that's reputable, the idea is that you're going to get your investment back. So it's basically a way to guarantee secure income during retirement that will come to you. Just we hear about people who have a pension or other things that our generation maybe not as much, depending on the industry. If we can control how we're going to receive our money in retirement and we can know where all of our dollars are, maybe we should do that, because it's a different generation than your parents that you'd hear people retiring and having a pension and having all these other different things coming to them. This is what is being created. I think the difference is that if for many companies in the past, like historically, they would set up a lot of this for people. Our generation has to just figure out how to do it themselves. You're not going to have someone come through and set this up for you, not without asking you for a lot of money to do. And honestly, you can do a lot of it independently now through a lot of these websites. Even through Fidelity or Charles Schwab, you can go right to the website and ask to consult with someone there. They're going to tell you what they recommend. And a lot of them are actually really cost effective to get started with, as opposed to going to someone privately. But I will tell you, as you dig in and you think, what's your priority? Maybe it is education and you want to do a 529 college savings plan. Maybe it's just emergency funds so that you have 6 months of freedom to be able to choose a job that you want without feeling crunched into a position you're not ready for or don't want. My thing that I have to say is, since we are managing a lot of this ourselves now, there's the big question of how do we invest responsibly? How do we focus on what is important to us? So I just pulled a bunch of different resources that I sent to Reagan. These are all very general articles. This is not something that I've read through every single one in full detail. The idea is that I was looking up really good resources on what it means to invest ethically and what that might mean to different people and where you can go to do so. And it's far too much information for us to break down in a way that might mean something like the right thing to everybody all at once. If someone's saying, I do my own investment. Yeah. So a lot of people manage their own. And so they choose exactly what they want to invest in. And I think that's really important to people right now. So I just wanted to make sure that we had some starting point for that, so that you guys, as you're digging into what you want to do, you can really think about, I'm going to put my money in here. What am I going to put my money towards that really means something to me in a way that I'm happy with?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such an important conversation and such a hard one to navigate. So thank you for pulling all of those resources. It's so important. I am amazed at both of your ability to take such an overwhelming and somewhat seemingly boring subject and make it so interesting and teach us so much. Do you have some wrap up, some takeaways? What would you say the key takeaways are from today that you want people to remember?
So my key takeaways, and I'm sure Rachel would agree and can chime in as well, your financial health is personal, right? You have your goals. You want to set your goals first. That is step one. What's important to you is not going to be important to your neighbor necessarily, right? And that's okay. Small steps, opening an IRA, negotiating for cell phone stipend, they do add up. And the nanny was going off of her parents' health insurance, had student loans due, was in a panic about the change in cost. She essentially, instead of getting paid the $1 more, she actually dropped her rate by about $3.50 and did everything else as bulk reimbursements. And at the end of the day, if you were trying to compare apples to apples, if you just pretended like it was all equivalent, it was more like she was walking away with $2 more an hour instead of $1 more an hour.
Wow.
And so it's worth taking those small steps to just start to play with the numbers and getting the most out of your compensation package. And definitely don't hesitate to look at resources. One of the first things Rachel told me when I started here a few years ago, she goes, if you feel overwhelmed, just do an article a day. Just grab an article from a knowledge center and just read one article. And eventually you're not going to memorize everything, but you're going to go, I know that's there somewhere. I'm going to know where to go to get it. And that was genius advice, Rachel. It made a huge difference. It made it feel like bite-sized, like you could just take it in little bits.
One of those atomic habits.
What I love about your guys' resources too, because you might not remember all of the information you need, but I can always remember, oh yeah, I know I've seen an article on Work Solutions about this topic where you can find it. So I love that.
Add to what Franny said, because I think she nailed it, right? It's yours. It's small steps, not waiting till you have $1 million to invest. The thing I would add is be brave. You are the best advocate for yourself, not anyone else. And if it's $5, really, if an entire year it's $5, go spend that $5 on the thing you want to move towards. I saw the best quote the other day, and it said, stop spending your weekends trying to recover from the life that you have and start building the life that you want. This is the same concept, right? If you only have, you say, I'm going to skip 1 cup of coffee a month or whatever it is, or I manage to pull together $5 a year, go take that $5, invest in yourself in whatever the thing is, retirement, whatever, that feels good to you, that speaks to you. Go put it in that education fund because you have this dream to go do whatever. That trip you want to take, you might not take it for 10 years, but go do it. Be brave. Just take any action because those steps all add up as you go.
They do. Look at the fringe benefit article and tell your family to call us. And we will find you $50 at minimum, I'm sure, somewhere in, even if you're just tracking the cell phone, we're going to find you a little bit of money there that you can then put towards other things. So
Absolutely. And Franny and Rachel have graciously opened up their calendars. So if you would love to schedule a consultation, the QR codes are here to book a call with them. And we are so grateful for that offer. And so now I would love to open up the floor for any questions. We received a few during registration. We can start with those while everybody gets in the chat if you have any questions that weren't covered during the presentation. But I'm just going to go ahead and start and go through our questions that we did receive first. If you want to come up and ask a question live and talk to Franny and Rachel, then just raise your hand and we'll bring you on up and you can unmute and ask your question. But the first question I wanted to ask from the registration questions is how do you even start that conversation about taxes? Do you have any quick tips about how you start that conversation about getting paid? I know we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but do you have any tips or places to direct the nanny who maybe isn't getting paid legally yet? How do they have that conversation?
This is her heart. So I think she should answer this.
Oh, thank you. It's my heart because I've been that nanny. Like you, I've had difficult conversations with employers where I felt silly because honestly, they were getting advice from their accountants and the advice wasn't correct. And so they were speaking with confidence and they were like, no, I'm pretty sure this is right. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure it's not. No one likes that conversation. It feels so difficult. I was definitely someone who paid as a 1099. I paid my own and I listened to an employer, I was like 18 or 19, listened to an employer who was like, this is great. You can set up your own business. And meanwhile, I'm working 60 hours a week to pay for school and take care of my brother. And I don't want to run my own business right now. That's what I want to do. I just want to survive. That's what I want to do. Throughout my career, it has become increasingly aware to me that it is courage, and I know it sounds corny, but it's courage that we need to understand that even the employers don't always know all of the ins and outs. So all the fear we have, right? All the fear that we feel, all the alliteration I like. Okay, so the fear that you feel, you need to have courage to balance it, to have a conversation, because they also don't always know. And it doesn't mean you have to be an expert at it either. So my biggest thing when I go to Nanny Palooza, when I talk to nannies, is it is okay if you do not know all of the ins and outs of this. What you need is a cheat sheet. You need a couple phrases in your head to get that conversation started. And the second they start either coming back with a different question that you go, I don't know the ins and outs of that, or they go, oh, I think you're wrong and I think I'm right. That is when you pivot and you say, I know this is complicated. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. Who would be great to talk to, and it's free to talk to them? Rachel or Franny. And you give them our contact info. So that way you aren't having to give them all of the ins and outs. You're able to just send them to a free consultation so that they can get educated on it. Because I promise you, you're probably spending more time thinking about this than they have yet. And I bet if they did, they would immediately go, ooh, yeah, this doesn't sound like it's correct. Let's see what we can do to fix it. If you're in that boat, you're not alone. But the way out is, unfortunately, it is a conversation. But it's going to be a conversation you feel better for having. So little steps with that. Have that topic at hand and then send them our way, and we will help them.
Absolutely.
Phone a friend.
Yeah, I would say most families, it's not that they truly don't want to pay you the right way. They truly think that's the right way they've been told. So
Yeah.
really just give them to the experts and let them tell them why it's wrong.
I always say, throw me under the bus. This crazy lady on this webinar, she said maybe
Something's
just
wrong.
Mhm. And you can call her too.
For
Yeah,
free.
she'll tell you actually exactly why.
Yeah.
I love that. We have another great question, and I'm going to try to paraphrase a little bit, but I've worked with my family since May. I make about $36 an hour in Boston, and they're adding another family next year. What could I be negotiating for this anniversary when the new baby's coming around? I already get healthcare coverage. Should I be thinking about 401k, more time off, more money? Where would
So
you start?
what's important to you, whoever is asking this question? That's what I would say, because it's very important that it be yours. If I give you an elephant and you don't want an elephant, that's not very helpful. So think about what it is you want. I think probably you listed those because that is what you want. So I would say go seek those things, figure it out. Families love you bringing the solution, not the problem. So say, hey, I know the standard in our area for adding another child is however many dollars an hour. I was thinking over the course of the year, that's X number of dollars based on how much I work. Great. If we just want to do a raise, I don't object, but here's maybe a way to save us both money and have things that really matter to me be added. If it's a retirement plan, I know you said 401k. 401k has become the Kleenex term, right? These are facial tissues technically, but we call them Kleenex because Kleenex is what comes to people's mind when you think of something to blow your nose with. A 401k, same thing. People use this term. It's actually hard for families to set up 401ks. There's a lot of fees with them. Even if that's not an obstacle, my personal feeling, and I will reiterate that my personal feeling is that it makes it where you don't have as much control over your money because there are usually these prescribed investments. Some have a bit of flexibility as to pick A or B, but you can still go out and use that same amount of money in a retirement vehicle, make it a simple IRA or whatever it is that, again, you can look at our resource sheet and figure out what works for you. But then you can go say, I want, it in this mutual fund that's safe. That's high risk. That's whatever, right? You can play with it and have a little more control. Or maybe it is more vacation. Maybe the family can't do that, but they can do the retirement. You just have to figure out what works for you. But I would absolutely always go in, I jokingly call them Christmas lists, but I would always go in with the Christmas list. Or if you don't want to think of it as a gift, something you've earned, I legit hear that, right? Christmas list is just my flippant way to make this less scary. So I get that these are things you earned, not some benevolent gift from above. But find out what that list is, because if you think of it in that more lighthearted way or a shopping list, it's easier to have that conversation for the last question, right? It doesn't feel so big. It feels more familiar. So I would just say, check out all the resources, figure out what it is you want, and go ask for it. Because you know what? I bet you deserve it. I have 3 kids. Adding additional children was a big deal. You earned it.
Absolutely. I would say our question asker is in the audience, and I think they had a quick follow-up. Go ahead and unmute yourself. It says you're Reagan.
It's super helpful. Wanted to thank you guys for all doing this. I love the idea about a 529. And if the family can do that, I have 2 kids in college right now, so that would be amazing. And if that could help, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of your information.
You can start it now. And really, there's not necessarily the same tax incentive for an employer on their side. But if it's what you want to do and what you want to open and it's part of your negotiation, you're like, man, I want $200 extra a month that I'm just putting into this fund to have it grow. It's fine to negotiate that the same way it's fine to negotiate, people negotiate gas stipends that are taxed at $200 a month, whatever you want to do. But to do that and to start now, I think my husband has one that his dad set up. His dad passed away when he was, I think, a freshman in college or something. He didn't even know about it until after he was out of undergrad. He finds out there's $10,000 in there, and he might go back to school. So he's like holding on to it. I might use it. And in the meantime, it's grown. In the past few years, it's now closer to 12,000 or something that he can just, great, if that's what he wants to do. Or if we have kids someday, he could say, okay, let's use it for this. He can send it to a dependent. It's blowing my mind how expensive education is and how so many people don't know about the 529 plan at all. Even my own family members who have kids are like, wait, what is it? What do I do?
No, I know about the 529. I just didn't know until recently that you could roll it over to somebody else in your family, which is amazing.
Crazy. Yeah.
And not to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but it can also be used for trade school. Just throwing that out there. It doesn't only have to be used
For K through 12.
So that was something that really, when we were looking into them, jumped out
And
at me.
if you're looking at the negotiation aspect of it with the new baby, go negotiate your QSERA healthcare benefit, use the money you save on the taxes and dump it in the 529. Like, then you're winning all day long, right?
That's
You got the
amazing.
negotiation that helped the family. Now you have float to play with. Put your float where your heart is.
Yeah.
I love that.
You guys are doing amazing work.
I say thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much for all this information. Suzanne, I know you asked, will all of these resources be shared afterwards? Absolutely. Everyone who is registered will get an email. It will have this deck in it with all of the codes, everything. I've got a SMART goal worksheet I'm even going to send out. I just put it together recently for another workshop. So I'm going to send that out since Rachel touched on SMART goals, and we'll get all of these resources out to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
I know I told Reagan this, but thank you all for being interested in this. I thought I was crazy as a nanny starting to play with these numbers because my background's in child development. It was not in taxes or finances. I just, like you, got very excited when someone would talk about something like this because no one in our industry was. And the fact that this many people are interested and are attending and want to ask these questions and read these articles, that is so exciting to me in this industry to see it. And I thank you all for being here too. So
Absolutely. It is absolutely incredible. And Franny said, thank you for being here. And yes, the recording will be available. It will be up. We'll send that link to you guys so you can send it to any friends who missed today as well. Thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your evening, and we will see you all later.
thank you, Adventure Nanny.
Bye. Thank you.